Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however, or whatever time you are watching us and consuming this dialogue. This dialogue, CUNY BMI dialogue, is very special. We are doing a series of four distinct dialogues that will lead up to our 18th annual conference. As you may or may not know, our 18th annual conference this year will be at Queens College, and the theme is legacy building through business and entrepreneurship. So to do that, we will also have these dialogues that will guide or help illuminate some of our students, alumni, and anyone who is seeking to get a new job, start a new business, or just get into a new career. And we're going to touch on very important points of the career and the entrepreneurship journey. For that, we have our resident expert, former career office director, advisor, photographer to the stars, Mr. Ron West, who is going to lead and moderate this first dialogue, and he will introduce our panelists, whom many of you already know. Take it away, Ron.
Hi, good morning to everyone. This is indeed a pleasure to have this opportunity to have some dialogue with you students and with our four distinguished panelists. What I want to do is just to introduce everybody briefly, Mr. Michael Beasley, who is a former, who's an alum of Lehman College, who at this point is a quality control manager for the Disney company. And he's also in the staff, he's a budding filmmaker, doing great work. Mr. Rashawn Banjo, who does many things, and maybe I should let Rashawn just say who he is because I'll get lost. Go, Rashawn.
Thank you, Ron, for the honor of having me on your esteemed panel. Rashawn Banjo, Prolific Consulting. I'm an entrepreneur, I'm an author, I'm a youth advocate, and I'm a community organizer. And I just appreciate being part of this conversation, being able to add anything from my experience that's beneficial. Thank you.
And last but not least is one of our newest staff members, Powell. Powell, you can just give us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Powell Lahanagoo, graduate of financial economics from Edgar Rivers College. Currently, I'm a college assistant. I'm working with BMI newly. Glad to join the team, and thank you for inviting me to be a panelist.
The goal of this series, in its four parts, we're going to be examining the interview, which is always a point of probability for most people. We're going to break it down into four complete sections. Today, we're going to look at the interview in its primary form. And we want to kind of keep the conversation fluid, candid, and for the students. This is the first time that you'll probably see students, former students and alumni of color talking about what it is that an interview is. There's been all kinds of trauma attached to them, and we're going to try to clear some of it up today. And hopefully, for our viewing audience, you walk away with some moments of, well, I never thought about it that way, or, you know, he makes a great point. But we're really just trying to give you some clarity, because we know that as you go into our career fair and also your preparation in your private life, these words and these thoughts and ideas, I think, will become something that you can just always go back to and say, wow, you know, that makes a lot of sense now. We're not going to try to overwhelm you with all kinds of facts, because that's not what this is. This is really just to kind of give you some aha moments. One of the things I'll say about interviews, for all of us, no matter at what point we are in our lives, there are two approaches to interviews. There's an approach where I need a job, and there's a lot of fear, frustration, panic, urgency, indifference, and desperation attached to people that just say, you know, I need a job, I need somebody to talk to, I'll take the interview. They're out of control at that point because of what they need to do. Then there's a flip side. There's a candidate who comes to the interview and sees, wow, a great opportunity, and he thinks he's God's gift to the employer, which is fine, because you go in with a lot more purpose, confidence, clarity, strategy. You're there to go and take position. You go in with clarity, you go in with confidence, and as the employer is talking to you, he's hearing why he should hire you by the way you approach it. A lot of us don't realize the fear that we have, or we don't admit to it, but that really controls your first impression. So we want to kind of go into what an interview is. So for all of us here at the table, just give me some reflection on at the primal point, at the foundational point of an interview. What is an interview to you guys?
Well, I guess I'll kick it off. I think you know, Ron, you really set the premise really well. An interview can be very scary, can be a very nervous endeavor because it kind of feels like you're being judged. But an interview is simply an organization or a group of people or a job who are trying to fill a position or a role on a team or need and trying to see if you, the person that's sitting before them, has the qualifications to fulfill that need and if they can work with you. Now, that's really hard to grasp within an hour or whatever conversation they have. So the primary focus towards the interview is just to see if you have the skills and capability to fulfill the job role.
Okay, Michael.
So for me, an interview is, well, an interview can be like whatever you make it out to be. Because, you know, there's different perceptions on how you want to address or confront or walk into an interview. But when you boil it down, well, for me, interview is really just, you know, it's really just an opportunity to showcase who you are and what you know, and how can you actually help solve the problem that is actually what they're asking for in terms of the position that is out there.
Powell?
Yeah, so to me, an interview is more like them assessing your liability, right? They want to assess how much risk would you bring to a company. Because if they interview, if you got to the table, they probably already did some sort of assessment or some sort of vouching as to, okay, why is this person eligible, right? So I feel like the interview, let's say the final round of interview, that would be like, or the first round of interview, that would be like the place where they see candidates who are most likely not going to perform well. They're not going to be promising, and they're going to bring more liability than be an asset to the company.
Okay, now, this is what classically happens. At the foundation of an interview, there's something very connecting about it. Impressions, and we're going to come back to what an interview is at the basic core. First impressions. Give me a little bit about how you feel about how important first impressions are and first distractions are.
Okay, can I go first? Okay.
Just jump into it. Just go.
Okay, just making sure I didn't want to like overtalk somebody.
Just jump into it. Go.
Okay, yeah. No, well, for me, for the interview, it's very important to know that the first impression is also can be a lasting impression for whoever is interviewing you. So it can be very important to, you know, like to rehearse and do your research not only on the company but yourself as well, just so you can speak more freely and actually answer the questions that they can ask you at the interview.
Yeah, going back to that, I don't really think of first impressions as being the biggest impactful thing along this hour-long or 45-minute-long conversation that you're about to have with this company. You do need to do the research. You do need to be prepared, but you do need to be prepared and early. So I say, if you think of first impression, your first impression should be early, because now you have the time to think, time to prepare yourself for this conversation. And now you're at a space where you're less distracted, as you say, Ron, as you walk into this conversation.
Go. Paul, jump
Yeah.
right in.
So I would say about presentation, it definitely, well, from my experience, it has helped me, right? I've met a recruiter, let's say a week before, and then the day of, they were like, oh yeah, you know, I know this guy, right? And I looked clean and corporate on the first day, and I feel like presentation brought me through the interview process pretty much.
Okay, now I'm giving you a little tidbit here about there's a connective tissue with all of this. First impression, first distraction. Both of them will cause a reaction by the person that you're trying to, or hopefully that you're going to meet and talk to and impress. They look at you differently both ways. If you take yourselves and put yourselves in the position of employer, how would you look at a person who's first distracting you or first impressing you in terms of the way they address the interview? What would you be expecting then?
So when I look to hire, and as we staff teachers, administrators, you look for someone that is has the information, has done a little bit more research on why they are fit for this position.
Mhm.
And also, we're at a space where every organization doesn't want to bring on, like the other brother said, Powell said, a liability. So they like to see what assets that you're bringing on, what value, what characteristics about yourself that would be additional to the organization. So I think that's something that is really key. And when you're looking in this conversation, what value can you bring to this organization, and why should they hire you?
Right. Now the students that are going to be watching this all suffer from the same trauma. Oh my God. What do I say? What do I do? What do I think? How do I act? So tell me a little bit about how you guys planned for your interviews. Just briefly, what strategy did you use when each of you planned for your interview to get your current positions? Share that with us.
Right. Okay. So for myself, it's a funny story. I remember when I first applied for Disney, they responded with an email for me to get an interview about like 2 or 3 hours later. It was pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And honestly, thinking back, I thought it was a scam because I was like, this is a little bit too good to be true. Mm-hmm. But eventually, after the phone interview and the in-person interview, I was like, okay, well, this is legit. This is actually happening. Mm-hmm. And prior to the interview, I was just, like rehearsing, like what Disney is about. What are their core values? Do I align myself with those core values? What can I bring to the table? What is my experiences? And just like as a quick rehearsal and stuff. And even though as giant of a conglomerate as Disney is, it can be intimidating depending on which job you're interviewing for. But I remember what one of my professor said back at Lehman, and it was saying that a person wouldn't be in the position that they are in unless they was actually had a chance to fulfill that position, Right. So it gave me like a different perspective on like, okay, if they're willing to interview me, they already have like some sort of belief system on like, I can do this job. Mm-hmm. There is a chance. And, it gives me like a little extra boost of confidence, like, hey, if they willing to interview me straight out of college, I must be doing something correct. And I must, there is a chance that I can fulfill the requirements that they're looking for.
Really quickly, I haven't interviewed in a long time. It's been a while. I'm a self-employed entrepreneur, but I remember specifically what I used to do. I would go over the job description, so I know pointedly what the aspects of the jobs are. Then to my brother's point, I would do a research on the organization, how big, how small. And then I would make sure that I'm ready. And what I mean by ready is you rehearse, you practice self-talk. You look in the mirror, right? And practice how you might introduce yourself and how that might sound, right? So it's not the first time you do it when you do it the next day, right? And it's okay to do that. It's called practice. And there's different forms of it. You might just be able to grab a friend, right? Or in CUNY's existence, there's multiple different offices that would love to participate in a practice interview session with you, and they love to do that. And then I'll be honest, as I'm walking to the office and interview, I play the most inspiring rap music or hip hop or song that I'm feeling that day, because now I know I'm ready. I'm not only ready, I'm prepared. And whatever decision this organization decides to make, I know I'm valuable. So I think that's something that's important. I just want to give that tidbit.
I love it. Powell, come on, give me something.
Yeah, so my strategy has been learning the jargon that they use, to conversate with. I feel like that brings a sense of familiarity, right? When they're having a conversation with you and they see that you know what you're talking about, they know what you're talking about, and the flow is very smooth. There's a chemistry going on. I feel like that helps a lot as well. And another thing I would do is definitely looking up the history of the company, being able to contribute where I can, even as someone that's just coming in as a stranger, right? You want to be able to have some sense of familiarity with them. So that's pretty much that.
I'm loving this right now. And let me ask you another question. When does an interview happen in your life? Give me an example of when an interview happens in your life.
Every time you introduce yourself, I would say.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every day people are sizing you up. Every day you're meeting people. Every day you're making transactions. You're going through interviews constantly.
Beasley?
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, you're going through interviews constantly without you even knowing. Because it can be as just as a simple question on like introducing yourself to somebody as a friend. It can be professional, it can be cordial or any type of regards. And in regards to I wanted to bring up a special point that I just thought about in terms of preparing for an interview. I was just thinking for a second, I was like, preparing can actually take years in terms of gaining the experience for said position. And another thing that I thought, like in terms of like what experience that you have, I was also thinking about like what can you bring different than the other candidates. So I always like express like to people who I mentor in high school and college and stuff like that, always say like like expand your horizons and try to like push the envelope on like whatever field that you want to be a part of. So that way you can bring a little bit of difference when you're actually applying yourself. So like, fair example, like with me, not only was I familiar with the media field, but I also spoke Korean. So that gave me a leg up from the other competition that also wanted that same position. But I just wanted to throw that little bit in there.
We're in a digital age where interviews happen just like we're having this conversation right now, right?
Okay.
So some of the premise is connection. And I love that. I think the common thread that you're kind of teasing.
Yeah.
But how do we make the connection to the interviewer to establish that I'm credible and my character is worthy for your organization? And I think what you're speaking to is how the students have to develop that. And it is different, right? That form of connection, right? Like if we're interviewing remotely, how do I connect with the person that's through the television or on the other side of the desk?
Be a little more specific. Come on, listen, Powell, Beasley, come on, help him out now. Help him out.
Okay, I got you. All right. So you know me, Ron, when it comes to in-person communication. You know me and my business cards. So I got my business cards, like on me at all times, just in case, so I can have a lasting impression. And like I would say, like business cards in my generation, they're not particularly used so often. But for me, it was just like when it comes to having professional relationships, or even just like getting the word out there on like who I am and getting my profile and my portfolio out there. I always recommend people to have a business card, even if you're still in college, just so you can have a lasting impression, like I said earlier, to whoever you're meeting. That way they can have a physical representation and a physical feel of like, okay, this guy stood out. He went the extra mile. He has a professional business card. I can always refer back to the business card on who he is and what he does and what he can bring to my company and such. In terms of breaking the ice, I'm guessing that's like one of the main things that you wanted to touch base on.
No, don't guess.
Okay, well, yeah, okay, yeah. So, well, that's what I think. But yeah, in terms of like breaking the ice with somebody who was out there, I really feel like it's really on who has the power, as you would say. A lot of people are scared of, which is normal, but like a lot of people are scared of the fear of rejection or fear of, like not feeling belonged or some sort and stuff like that. And I always say it's always best to like come put your best foot forward and believe that the ball is in your court. The more you believe in yourself and what you can do, the more you're able to put yourself out there and actually make the connection. It doesn't always have to be like, oh, my name is Michael Beasley, I can do A, B, and C. It can just start as something as simple as, hi, I like your dress, where you work for.
If I can chime in, I think that's exactly where I was going to go next with it. You got to create a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're sitting across from somebody, if I'm interviewing, I want a conversation. And I want the conversation to be about what the person's interests are, how they feel a void in this organization. And by the end of that conversation, I want to be confident that not only can you fulfill this job, but I may actually enjoy working with you, right? I may learn something. I may be valuable. You may be funny, whatever it is. So your personality has to come across through that interview. And for my introverts, it's not that you have to do a song and dance. That's not what we're saying here. We're not saying act a role, play a role. We want you to be your unique selves, but we want you to be your unique selves through creating conversations that people can get some of those key indicators about you, right? So I enjoy long walks. I enjoy sports. I enjoy, computers. Those things help connect to what the other person on the other side is. and then they make those connections to the job ultimately.
The answer that I was looking for, that I was searching for, and I kept going back to foundationally what all of it is, nothing matters unless you are able to communicate. What escapes most of our students is the confidence to communicate. They have it in their heads, but it becomes very traumatic that they can't get it out. Guys.
Well, I think I can understand that. You know, people don't like to be judged. People like in many cases, sometimes interviews are in a panel sample, a panel formation. So you have multiple people that are asking you questions. It can still be very, difficult to kind of go through that process, and nobody likes it. You know, even people who are really good at interviewing don't really want that to happen on a day-to-day basis. But what Ron is speaking to is having that preparation and courage to practice, right? Using the resources around yourselves and the key characteristics that make you you, and finding ways to incorporate that in a conversation that lets people know about you. And let me tell you something, you can rehearse the same script. So once you do have interview and once you get comfortable, you can say the same thing over and over, right? And let me tell you something, it will work because you will get better at it. And so for those people who have those apprehensions, practice along with, continuing to reinforce your own mindset around who you are and how you want to be portrayed are key factors to being successful in interviews.
If you can, each person just give the students one primary strategy that you developed to help you become successful at an interview. Just one thing that you walk in and it works.
I would say one thing that I've developed, or one thing that I do after having like a series of 3 interviews back to back on the same day one time, I noticed that every new person or every new recruiter, for example, is just a new opportunity of branding yourself, right? You have if you mess it up the first time, the next one you can just make that exact correction, and that works perfectly, especially when you're doing it back to back, right? So I feel like at the last interview, I should have, whatever I did on the last interview is what I should have done on the first one, because the last interview is who called back, right? So it's more about practice than it is about well, yeah, it's definitely more about practice. So if you have that whole experience with getting through the nervous phase of interviewing, going through the same questions asked in different ways, where they're just trying to assess how valuable you are, right? And you're able to answer them perfectly fine, that's when they definitely would give you the call back, right?
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
Banjo.
Yeah, going back to this point, just going on interviews. A lot of times, most times, the thing that we fear the most, once we do it, we realize on the other side of it wasn't as arduous as we ever made it out to be. So going back to the young brother's point, if your role is to get a higher job or get a job that is sorted to career, maybe take interviews for hourly wages or hourly jobs so that you get the familiarity around sitting in front of somebody and practicing what your labels are. So this way, maybe it takes some of the sting off of, the how important the interview may be, but also, to our point, gives you the practice and the reps, so that it makes you feel more comfortable.
Okay, Beasley.
Well, for me, I would like to say that I think that a common denominator in all of this is that the first hurdle in all of this really is overcoming the fear of the interview and actually trying. Because I feel like fear is it will kill more dreams than failure ever will. So I think that, like when you overcome the fear of the interview itself, right? Practice makes progress in all this, No interview, no matter how much preparation you do, that you are promised or guaranteed for, So I think it's always important that you continuously try, continuously practice, and putting yourself out there, because like Denzel Washington once said, if you're not failing, you're not even trying, So it's always important to have that mindset of, okay, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna give 100% of my best, and as long as I try my best, I have nothing to be ashamed of.
We talk about fear. We talk about.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question.
Sure.
Everybody on this call probably bombed the interview before, right?
Yeah, I have. I know I have.
Just want to make sure.
So
Thank
now
you.
we look at what fear does to us. Fear is paralyzing. Fear, when we adopt fear, we let power go. We let our power to reason and overcome go when we let fear take over. So how do we go? I mean, how do you go into knowing that, well, I'm going to give it my best shot. And when I come out, I'm going to kind of critique myself. Just briefly, what has been your biggest critique of yourself?
I definitely passed up on asking really good questions one time. I will never forget that. At the end of the interview, they were asking us, "So what do you have to say?" And I was like, "Nothing. Everything is perfectly fine." Where it really wasn't, right? I feel like at the end of the interview, you should definitely ask questions that would make them question why, okay, this guy should probably be on our team, right? You're asking questions about their internal, mechanisms and how they function. Like, I had an interview with JP Morgan at the NABA convention in New Orleans. The question I asked them was, if I was a new hire, 1 year after being a new hire, what is the reason I would quit? What's the most likely reason I would quit? And they were stunned for like a good 20 minutes. They were like, what do I even tell this guy? Because now this guy's asking us, okay, he probably thinks he's so good that after 1 year of being at the company, what would be the reason he would want to leave voluntarily, right? And then they were like, oh, I don't even know how to answer that question. But then they gave me some generic answer that I can definitely see through. They were like, probably the work from home thing because everybody's coming back and forth. But that's, universal across every company. So it's not specific to their company, which was my problem. But after that, they definitely marked down, a little scribble on my resume just to look back at it later. But yeah, so definitely ask questions after the interview.
Banjo.
I would just say not being genuinely myself, thinking that I had to conform to what the job was or try to illustrate what they wanted to see as opposed to being more authentic. So I would just say make sure you be yourself and represent the characteristic that you're true to.
Hey, Beasley. And then we're going to start to wrap. Beasley.
Right. So I want to highlight what Powell said, because what he said was very true. You also have to understand there's that power dynamic of asking questions. When you ask questions, it definitely shows that, one, that you are attentive in what the interview is, and that you actually care for the position that you will put yourself in, and this, you have to look at it as like, this isn't just an interview on you. This is also an opportunity for you to interview the employer. And you can learn a lot more than just what you see on Google spreadsheets, the jobs, the listing and stuff. This is like your opportunity to find out, is this the best fit for yourself as well?
Now I'm gonna kind of put a little ribbon on this. Who's more important, the employer or you? Who needs who more? Do you need the employer more, or do you feel like they need you more? That's an attitude. That's an attitude when you sit down with somebody. Who needs who more? Because I tell students all the time, whatever you see in Indeed or LinkedIn, whenever you see a job posting, it's nothing but a cry for help. And if you know that they're looking for somebody and you're that someone, for all the students that are going to be watching this, if you know you're that someone and you have the confidence to go in and say, you know what, I'm the one you've been looking for, just like in the love songs, a guy's looking for a lady. If you feel like you're the one, your attitude changes. You don't go in with your head bowed and not knowing what to say. That's why I go back to there's no substitute for communication about what you can do, what you can deliver. The power that we have, the power that students have, but they have a problem kind of using it, is bringing that power and putting it right on the table when you're having a money conversation. Life is filled with money conversations. So one last comment, and I'd like to just have each of you briefly just leave our students with one bit of good advice at this point for interviewing.
Okay, yeah. So for me, one of my favorite quotes is, if you want something bad enough, you find a way. If not, you find an excuse. So always stay motivated. Go in there, believing in yourself, and always try.
Thank you.
In any job, don't value yourself by the salary or the hourly wage. Value yourself by what you're learning or the impact that you're giving to the organization or the impact it's having on you. So like my mantra, impact over income. make sure that you're representing yourself, but also that you're getting something for the value that you bring.
Powell?
Yeah, I would say that if they picked up interest in you in the first place, there was probably a reason why, and you should definitely hold into that and accept that. You should accept the qualities that you presented yourself with, and so that you can excel in that space.
I'd like to say thank you for everyone. This has been enlightening, and for anyone watching this, the answers that we gave are definitely answers to think about. The 4-part series that we're putting together, and Jorge knows, my purpose, priority, preparation, and presentation. Those 4 words in that order, by definition and application, put us in a very, very good place. And as we present ourselves, the power of our conversations cannot be denied or reduced. I always tell students, and I think they'll walk away from this thinking the same thing from you gentlemen. You guys have mastered all of those things: presentation, priority, to get to the point that you're at. You're on your way. You're not there yet, but you've succeeded so far. So on behalf of our panel, CUNY BMI Career Development Dialogues, and our team, I'd like to say thanks for having us.
Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much to the entire panel, Michael, Rashawn, and Powell. It's great to always have you. It's also really important to have the voice of our alumni resonate with some of our current students. Everything that was said could be taken and applied in different situations, in different instances. And I think it's also really important to note that these dialogues aren't, as you said, Ron, they're answers to the questions, but they're not answer keys to all the questions, right? And so please take the time to review this and the upcoming dialogues. I'm going to leave everybody with a piece of advice when it comes to career. Register for the CUNY BMI 18th Annual Conference. We will have a career and internship fair. There will be panels that will teach you and prepare you for your interviews, for your career aspirations. You can find the registration on our website. You can find our announcements on our social media. With that, we'll leave you until the next time.